A forest no one dares to enter, for within its shadows the weaver waits. Her curse has claimed generations, binding souls in an endless darkness. But when a mother steps into the cursed woods to save her child, she discovers a terrifying truth. Some threads of fate are woven in blood, and only courage can cut them. This is not just a story, it is a warning. Long ago, before the white man's roads carved through the land and before the iron birds flew across the skies, there was a village deep within the belly of the forest. This village was called Ume, and it was a place where the earth whispered secrets and the trees remembered the voices of the dead. The elders often warned, in Ume the shadows are not empty. It was a saying carried from one generation to the next, but over time people began to laugh at it, dismissing it as the trembling fears of the old. They built their homes, tilled the soil, and sang to the gods, certain that no curse could touch them. But deep within the forest, beneath a canopy so thick that the sun could not pierce it, a presence waited. They called her the Weaver. The Weaver was no ordinary witch. It was said she was born under an eclipse, her first cry silencing the village drums, her tiny hands clutching a thread of shadow instead of flesh. The old tales claimed she once lived among the people, her beauty and wisdom unmatched. But when famine struck the land, the people accused her of hoarding her magic and cursing their harvests. In their rage, they bound her to a tree at the edge of the forest and set fire to her home. Yet, as the flames devoured her hut, she did not scream, she laughed. And with her laughter came words that would stain the bloodlines of Ume forever. If you strip me of my home, I shall strip you of your future. Your children will walk my threads, and your shadows will bow to me. When dawn came, the people thought they had rid themselves of her. But one by one, the children of the hunters who burned her home vanished. All that remained in their empty beds were strands of black thread. The curse had begun. Generations passed, but the weaver's presence never faded. Her shadow loomed over Ume, binding itself to its people like an invisible chain. Some claimed to hear her loom humming in the dead of night. Others swore they saw her figure between the trees, tall and thin, her face veiled in silk, watching, waiting. It was in this cursed village that Nenena lived. Nena was a young mother, her spirit as fierce as the river in the rainy season. Her husband Okoro had been taken by sickness 2 harvests ago, leaving her with their only child, Adaeze, a girl of 6, with wide, curious eyes, and laughter that once filled their small hut with light. But of late, that laughter had grown quiet. It started with whispers. At first, Nena thought they were the wind rustling through the trees, but soon she noticed Adaeze would stop mid-play, tilt her head, and smile at nothing. "Mama," she had said one night, pointing to the dark corner of the hut, "the woman is weaving again." Nena's heart turned cold. No one spoke of weaving at night. The elders said it was the way the weaver marked her prey. Within days, the signs grew worse. Chickens died without reason. Clay pots cracked though no one touched them, and Adaeze began waking with black threads tangled in her hair. Desperate, Nena went to Mama Ifeoma, the oldest woman in Ume, a keeper of stories and guardian of forgotten truths. Bent and frail, Mama Ifeoma's eyes still carried the sharpness of someone who had seen too many seasons. "The weaver has touched your child," Mama Ifeoma said grimly, tracing the threads in her palm. "Once she marks you, the curse is a rope around your neck. You can fight, but every step only tightens it." Nena trembled. "Tell me how to save her." The old woman sighed, her gaze drifting toward the forest. "No one is saved, Nena. You can only delay her hand. But to do that, you must face her shadow and pray you do not vanish like the others." That night, as Nenena held Adaeze close, she heard it for the first time. The hum. It was faint, almost gentle, like a mother singing to a child, but beneath it was something hollow, something ancient, a sound that spoke of endings. And when Nena looked outside toward the black line of the forest, she saw it. A thread, thin, glistening, and black as midnight, stretching from her doorstep into the woods. The curse had come to her door. And for the first time in her life, Nena understood why the elders still whispered their warning by the fireside. In Ume, the shadows are not empty, and the weaver always takes what she is owed. The night the thread first appeared, Nena did not sleep. She sat by the fire with a daisy curled against her chest, her small hands clutching Nena's wrapper tightly, as though even in sleep she sensed the danger creeping closer. The thread lay across the threshold of their hut, thin and glistening like a serpent waiting to strike. It stretched into the forest, vanishing into the trees where no lantern light could reach. Every instinct told Nena to cut it, to burn it, to do anything but follow it. But then came the whispers. Nena! Her name drifted through the night air, soft as wind, but sharp enough to cut through her bones. It was not one voice, it was many. Some she recognized, her mother, long buried, her husband, Okoro, gone these past 2 years, and among them, faint but unmistakable, was the laughter of her daughter. Nena's heart froze. Adeze was still in her arms, fast asleep. Do not listen, Mama Ifioma had warned her earlier that day, gripping her wrist with surprising strength for an old woman. The weaver will call you with the voices you ache for most. If you follow, you will not return. But Nena could not stop herself from staring at the thread. Outside, the wind shifted, and the hum began again, low, rhythmic, like the sound of a loom pulled tight. It came from deep in the forest, carrying with it the faint scent of burning palm oil and wet earth. And then a daisy stirred. Mama, she whispered, still half asleep, she's waiting for us, the woman in the dark. Nena's blood turned to ice. What woman, a daisy? The one with the long arms, her daughter murmured, her voice dreamy. She said Papa is with her. She said if we follow the thread, we'll see him again. The words hit Nena like a spear. Before she could respond, a loud crack split the night, the sound of a calabash shattering outside. Nena leapt to her feet, clutching a daisy tightly as she edged toward the door. Peering out, her breath caught in her throat. The thread was no longer still. It was moving. Not fast, not violently, just a slow, steady twitch as though something was pulling it from the forest. With each pulse, it crept closer to her doorway, inch by inch. Fear threatened to crush her, but she could not look away. And then, at the edge of the tree line, she saw it. A figure. It stood impossibly tall, its limbs too long for any human frame, its face hidden behind a veil of black silk. Its hands, if they could be called that, were nothing but spindly shadows that wove and pulled at invisible threads. The weaver! Nena stumbled back, clutching a daisy so tightly the child whimpered in her arms. She wanted to scream, but the sound died in her throat. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure raised its head. Nena's breath faltered. It was wearing Okoro's face. Not perfectly. It was as if the shadow had only a memory of him, his smile too wide, his eyes hollow and black, but the outline was there. Her heart screamed at her to run, but her feet were rooted in place. Come, Nena! The figure spoke in a voice that was not Okoro's but close enough to shatter her. Bring my child, we are waiting. A daisy stirred in her arms again, this time fully awake, her tiny hands reaching toward the door. Papa, she whispered. No, Nena cried, staggering back, clutching her daughter with desperate strength. The shadow tilted its head in silence. Then, slowly, it raised one of its long, spindly fingers and tapped the thread. The ground beneath Nena's feet shuddered. The thread pulsed once, twice, then coiled toward the doorway like a living thing. And then it stopped. The figure retreated into the darkness of the trees, vanishing as if it had never been there. Only the thread remained, glistening in the moonlight, a silent invitation that promised only one thing: doom. For the first time in years, Nena prayed, not to the gods, but to anything that might listen. But even as the words left her lips, she knew the truth. The weaver had marked her. From that night on, Adaiza began speaking less and less. She would sit at the doorway, staring at the thread with hollow eyes. The hum of the loom never stopped. And every time Nena tried to pull her daughter away, she would whisper the same chilling words. We have to go, Mama. He's waiting for us. And Nena, though she never admitted it, felt the pull too. Because deep down, in the shadow of her heart, part of her wanted to believe it. The days after that night became a blur of fear and sleeplessness. Nena barred her doors with heavy wooden planks and sprinkled the ashes of burnt palm leaves around her hut, an old protection ritual her grandmother once taught her. Yet no barrier could keep away the sound. The hum of the weaver's loom never ceased. Morning, noon, and night it echoed faintly in her ears, sometimes soft as a lullaby, other times sharp enough to rattle her bones. No one else in the village seemed to hear it, not even when Nenna screamed at them, begging for help. "Your mind is playing tricks on you, Nenna," the men told her as they sharpened their machetes in the sun. "Keep away from the forest, and the shadows will leave you be." But Mama Iphioma, who sat by the fire with her ever-watchful eyes, only shook her head. "Once the weaver threads her mark," she whispered, "the cloth is already woven. You cannot unmake it, child. You can only hold it at the edges until it swallows you." Nenna refused to accept that. She would not lose a daisy, not to a shadow, not to a witch. Each night she stayed awake, clutching her daughter while staring at the thread outside her door. It never vanished. It only stretched farther, weaving through the grass and vanishing into the dark belly of the forest. And then one night she saw something new. Small footprints. They were a daisies. Bare tiny feet pressed into the soil, leading away from the hut. Nenna's chest tightened as she glanced at her daughter, fast asleep beside her. But when she turned back, the footprints were fresh. They glistened with morning dew, as though they had just been made. Her heart pounded. She stepped outside and followed them. The moonlight was pale, the night air heavy with the smell of damp earth. Each step took her closer to the edge of the forest, where even the bravest hunters refused to go after sunset. And then she heard it. A child's laughter. Not a daisy's, not exactly. It was fainter, echoing like it came from deep underwater, but it was her daughter's voice nonetheless. "Mama, come!" Nenna froze. Her hands trembled as the wind rustled the trees, and in that rustle she swore she could hear the faint hum of the loom once again. But before she could take another step, a hand gripped her arm. It was Mama Iphioma. The old woman's face was grim as stone. "You are walking her path, child," she hissed. "Do you want to be the next name the forest swallows?" Nenna's knees nearly gave way. "She has a daisy's voice. I heard her." "That is what she does," Mama Iphioma said, tightening her hold. "The weaver does not take you with chains. She spins you into her cloth with the threads of your own longing. That is how she fed on your husband. That is how she will feed on you." The words struck Nenna like lightning. Okoro, the figure she saw in the forest, the shadow wearing his face. She staggered back, tears welling in her eyes. "Then what am I supposed to do? Just wait until she comes for my child?" The old woman's silence was answer enough. That night, Nenna locked every window and every door, but sleep was a stranger. She lay with a daisy in her arms, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum. And then she saw it. Threads, dozens of them. They stretched across the ceiling of her hut like a spider's web, glistening faintly in the dim firelight. One by one they slithered down the walls, silent but alive, as if weaving themselves around her home. A daisy stirred, her small eyes opening, and for the first time in days she smiled. "She's almost done, Mama," the little girl whispered. Nenna's blood turned cold. "Who?" "The woman with the long arms. She said she's making us a place in her cloth. Papa is there too. It's warm, Mama." The child's words were soft, innocent, but they cut Nenna deeper than any blade. She leapt to her feet, sweeping her daughter into her arms and snatching the machete that had belonged to her husband. She slashed at the threads, but the blade passed through them as if they were made of smoke. And then, as if mocking her, the threads pulsed once, twice, and tightened around the hut like a noose. From deep in the forest the hum rose louder, clearer, and beneath it came a voice, low, melodic, and inescapable. "Come to me, Nenna, come and bring the child." The wind howled, the fire in the hearth sputtered and died, shadows stretched across the floor like black rivers. And for the first time, Nenna realized what Mama Iphioma had meant. The weaver did not come for you with claws or fangs, she came with promises. And she never ever lied. By the fourth night, Nenna's spirit was fraying like an old cloth left too long in the rain. The threads now covered her home like a cocoon, shimmering faintly in the moonlight. Every time she looked at them, she swore they pulsed, like a living heart surrounding her and a daisy. The villagers began to avoid her hut. Mothers whispered to their children not to walk too close, and even the men who once dismissed her fears now crossed themselves when they passed her compound. They had seen the shadows stretching from her door at night, weaving across the ground like black veins feeding into the cursed forest. Mama Ifeoma visited only once more. She stood at the threshold, her walking stick planted firmly in the soil, her sharp eyes cutting through the darkness. "You must choose, Nena," she said, her voice low and urgent. "The weaver has wound her thread around you both. Soon she will pull, and when she does, there will be no stopping her." Nena clutched a daisy tighter. "Tell me how to stop her. There must be a way." The old woman's face was a mask of sorrow. "There is no stopping her. There is only holding on until the last moment, or stepping into the cloth before she can take you unwilling." The words made no sense to Nena, and yet deep in her heart she understood them. The weaver could not be fought, only bargained with or obeyed. That night, when the hum began again, low, heavy, and unrelenting, Nena made her choice. She wrapped a daisy in a thick shawl, kissed her daughter's head, and whispered, "Hold on to me, my child. Do not let go, no matter what happens." A daisy, her small face pale in the dim light, nodded without question. Nena pushed open the door. The threads parted for her like a curtain. The forest loomed ahead, vast and silent. No crickets, no owls, only the steady hum of the loom guiding her deeper and deeper into the darkness. Each step felt heavier than the last, the air thick with the scent of wet soil and old forgotten things. The further she went, the stranger the forest became. The trees were no longer straight and proud, but bent and twisted, their branches tangled like knotted hair. Shadows clung to their trunks, moving as if alive, stretching and shrinking in the pale moonlight. And then she saw it. The loom. It stood in a clearing, larger than any house in the village. Its frame was made of bones, long, pale bones that clicked softly in the night breeze. Threads of black and crimson stretched across it, endless and glistening like rivers of blood and shadow. And there, at the heart of it, was the weaver. Her body was impossibly tall, her arms thin as reeds, weaving without pause. Her face was hidden beneath a veil, but Nena could feel her eyes on her, cold, ancient, unblinking. "Welcome," the weaver said, her voice soft and smooth like silk sliding over skin. "You have brought the child." A daisy stirred in Nena's arms, but did not cry. Instead, she smiled faintly, as if the weaver's voice was the sweetest lullaby. "Why?" Nena's voice cracked. "Why my family? Why my husband? Why my child?" The weaver tilted her veiled head. "Because your line was spun into my cloth long ago, your husband merely followed his thread. Now it is your turn, and hers." Nena's knees weakened, but she stood her ground. "Take me instead. Leave my child." The weaver's long fingers stilled for the first time. The hum of the loom ceased, and the silence was suffocating. "You offer yourself?" Nena's breath came ragged, but she nodded. The weaver chuckled, a sound like dry reeds snapping in the wind. "Brave, but the cloth has no room for bargains. Every thread must be woven where it belongs." And then from the loom the shadows moved. They twisted and writhed until they formed a shape, a man's shape. Nena gasped. It was him, or at least what was left of him. His face was pale and hollow, his eyes two pools of black, but his voice was still his. "Nena," he said, stepping forward with trembling hands. "Bring her to me. We can be a family again. No more hunger, no more fear, just the cloth forever." Nena's heart split in two. A daisy reached out for her father with a small eager cry. "Papa!" Nena clutched her tighter, shaking her head. "No, no, you're not him, you're not!" The weaver's hum began again, louder, vibrating in Nena's bones. "Choose," the weaver whispered. "Walk away and watch the thread pull her from you, or step forward and weave yourselves in together." Nena's hands trembled. The forest seemed to close in on her. Shadows crawled at her feet. A daisy was slipping from her arms, reaching for the father she no longer remembered. And for one terrible moment, Nena almost stepped forward. But then she remembered Mama Ifeoma's words. "The weaver does not take you with chains. She spins you into her cloth with the threads of your own longing." And with every shred of strength she had left, Nena turned and ran. Nena's breath tore from her chest as she ran, a daisy clutched tightly in her arms. The forest seemed endless, its branches clawing at her hair and scratching her skin. Behind her, the hum of the weaver's loom grew louder, no longer distant, but pounding like war drums. It was as if the entire forest had become an instrument for the witch's will. "You cannot run, child," the weaver's voice floated on the wind, calm, patient, terrifying. "The thread always leads back to me." Nenna's legs burned, but she did not stop. She stumbled over roots and tore through brambles, clutching a daisy tighter every time the girl whimpered in fear. Her daughter's tiny arms wrapped around her neck, trembling. The moonlight broke through the canopy for only a moment, and there, through the trees, Nenna saw it, the edge of the forest. Her heart leapt, just a little farther, but then the ground beneath her feet shifted. She fell forward, nearly dropping a daisy, and caught herself against a tangle of roots. When she looked down, her stomach turned to stone. The earth itself was laced with threads, black and crimson strands writhing like worms, sinking deep into the soil. And from those threads, shadows began to rise. Figures, dozens of them. Some were tall and gaunt, some small and hunched, their faces hidden in darkness. But their eyes, oh, their eyes, burned faintly red, hollow and endless. Among them she saw him. "Okoro." "Nenna," he said again, his voice breaking like a man caught between grief and joy. "You can't keep running. She will only pull harder." Nenna's legs weakened, but she forced herself to stand. "Stay back," she screamed, raising her machete, though her hands trembled violently. Okoro stepped closer. His shadowed form seemed almost human now, but frayed at the edges like old cloth unraveling. "This isn't suffering, it's peace. Look at me, I don't feel pain anymore. You and Adaisy, you could be here too, with me." Adaisy's small voice pierced the night. "Papa." The sound cut through Nenna like a blade. Tears burned her eyes, but she tightened her hold on her daughter and shook her head violently. "No, you are not my husband is gone. You are what she made of him." The shadows behind Okoro stirred like a restless tide, and then slowly they began to move forward, their steps in perfect, dreadful unison. The hum deepened, and from somewhere unseen, the weaver's voice whispered like silk sliding across bone, "If you will not walk, I will pull." Suddenly, the threads on the ground lashed upward like snakes. One coiled around Nenna's ankle, another snaked around her wrist. She slashed with her machete, but the blade passed through them as though they were made of smoke. She fell to her knees, dragging Adaisy close to her chest. The little girl clung to her mother's shawl, crying silently. Mama Ifeoma's words echoed in her mind, "The cloth is already woven. You cannot unmake it, child. You can only hold it at the edges until it swallows you." And then in that moment of despair, Nenna saw it, faintly glowing beneath the roots. A mark. It was small, carved into the earth like an ancient sigil. She had heard of it only once before, when she was a girl, sitting by the fire as the old hunters whispered of the crossroads of threads, the one place in the cursed forest where the weaver's power wavered. She had no proof it would work, but it was the only chance left. Clutching a daisy, she crawled toward it, the threads clawing at her legs, the shadows closing in. Okoro's voice grew louder, pleading now. "Nenna, please, you don't understand. She's mercy, not punishment." She did not look back. Every inch forward felt like a lifetime. The sigil glowed brighter with every step until she collapsed at its center, gasping for air. And then silence. The hum stopped. The threads recoiled like struck serpents, and the shadows froze in place. Even Okoro stood still, his hollow eyes fixed on her with something that almost looked like grief. The weaver's voice came again, no longer smooth and calm, but sharp, edged with fury. "You dare step beyond my loom?" The forest trembled. Trees groaned and cracked. Darkness pressed in like a storm. But Nenna held a daisy and pressed her hand against the glowing mark. For the first time the witch sounded uncertain. "You cannot hold it forever, child. Every thread frays, every edge unravels, and when it does, I will be waiting." And then, just as suddenly as it began, the shadows withdrew. The forest went still. Nenna lay there in the dirt, holding her daughter, shaking with exhaustion and terror. A daisy's small hand brushed her cheek, and for the first time in what felt like years, the little girl whispered, "Mama, is it over?" Nenna stared into the silent forest. "No, child," she said softly, her voice breaking. "It's only begun." Dawn never came. Nena sat at the edge of the glowing sigil, clutching a daisy in her arms, but the forest remained cloaked in endless twilight. The mark beneath her palm was dimming now, its light flickering like a dying ember. She knew it could not hold forever. And in the distance the hum began again. It was softer this time, slower, almost patient, as if the weaver herself was savoring the moment. Nena's heart pounded, but she rose to her feet, lifting a daisy onto her back. "Mama," a daisy's voice was weak but steady, "I'm scared." Nena kissed her child's forehead. "I am too, my star, but fear will not stop us now." For the first time since the curse began, her voice carried strength. The hum deepened. The threads at the edges of the forest began to creep toward the sigil once more, slithering over the ground like black rivers. The weaver's voice followed, soft but unrelenting. "Come, child, you cannot run forever. The cloth was spun long before you drew your first breath. It is time to take your place within it." Nena's fingers tightened around her machete. The weight of her ancestors pressed against her back. She could almost hear them, voices of old women by the fireside, warning of the weaver's loom and the price of defiance. But now she also heard something else. Her mother's voice. "Even curses must bow to the will of the one who refuses to kneel." She stepped out of the sigil. The forest stirred like a living thing. Shadows unfurled from the trees, wrapping around her feet, her hands, her chest. But this time she did not falter. Nena walked. Each step brought her closer to the clearing where the loom waited. The weaver stood there, impossibly tall, her veil of shadows flowing like ink in the air. Her long fingers never ceased their weaving, each movement sending a vibration through the ground. But this time Nena was not trembling. "I will not let you take her," Nena said, her voice steady as iron. The weaver tilted her head, the threads of the loom shimmering in the dark. "You still do not understand. I do not take, I only weave. You, your child, your husband, each of you is only a strand in my cloth, nothing more." Nena lifted her machete, the blade dull but unbroken. "Then I will cut your cloth." A sound unlike any other rippled through the clearing. Laughter. It came from the weaver, sharp and cold, rattling the bones of the forest. "Foolish mortal, do you think steel can sever what has no beginning and no end?" But Nena did not lower the blade. Steel cannot, but will can. With a daisy clinging to her back, Nena stepped forward. Every shadow in the clearing surged toward her, but she pushed through, each stride heavier than the last. The hum became deafening, the loom shuddering as if the world itself were trembling. Okoro's figure appeared again, his hollow eyes fixed on her. "Nena," he begged, "please, just let it end. Join us." For a single heartbeat, she faltered. Her husband's voice, the man she had loved, was like a knife through her chest. But then a daisy's tiny hand touched her shoulder. "Mama," the girl whispered, "don't stop." And Nena didn't. She reached the loom. Its threads were vast and endless, stretching out into the night sky like constellations of shadow and blood. But there, at its center, was a single glowing knot, a point where all the strands converged. The heart of the curse. With a scream that tore through the forest, Nena raised her machete high and brought it down. The blade met the knot with a force that split the air. For an instant, nothing happened. Then the world shook. The hum shattered into silence. The threads convulsed like wounded serpents, unraveling in every direction. The weaver shrieked, her form writhing, her veil torn away to reveal a face not of beauty nor horror, but emptiness, an endless void where no eyes, no mouth, no soul existed. "No," her voice roared, reverberating through the earth, "you cannot unmake what was written." But Nena's hands did not falter. She pressed the blade deeper into the knot. And then, with one final ear-splitting snap, the loom broke. The forest erupted with light. Shadows dissolved. The hum died forever. Okoro's form faded, his hollow eyes softening into something almost human. For the first time since the curse began, he smiled, not with sorrow but peace, before vanishing into the light. The weaver's voice became a whisper, thin and distant. "Every thread frays, but I will find another cloth." Then she was gone. Nena collapsed to her knees, a daisy still clinging to her. The forest was quiet, the air was clean, and for the first time in years, dawn broke over the treetops. Nenna looked up at the rising sun, her face streaked with tears, but her heart steady. She had not merely survived, she had transformed. And deep in her soul she knew the weaver would not return. But the story of the witch's curse would live forever. The sun rose higher, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson as Nenna carried a daisy out of the forest. Her steps were unsteady, her body bruised and torn, but her spirit burned with a strength she had never known before. The silence of the woods was no longer oppressive. It was clean, sacred, as if every tree, every leaf, had been freed from an ancient burden. When they reached the village edge, the people gathered. They had waited, fearful that the cursed woods had claimed yet another soul. But when they saw Nenna emerge from the shadows, holding a daisy against her chest, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. "By the ancestors," one elder whispered, his staff trembling in his hand. "She came back." The villagers rushed forward, their eyes wide with awe and disbelief. Mothers clutched their children, men bowed their heads, and the elders, those who once told stories of the weaver only in hushed tones, now looked at Nenna as if she had walked out of a myth. But Nenna did not bask in their awe. She only placed a daisy down gently, brushing the girl's hair from her face. A daisy, no longer crying, no longer trembling, clung to her mother's skirt with a quiet strength that mirrored her own. "Mama," Adiza whispered, looking up at her with tear-streaked cheeks but a steady gaze, "is it really over?" Nenna knelt down, cupping her daughter's face. "Yes, my star, the weaver is gone. She will not touch us again." Adiza's lips curved into a small, trembling smile, and for the first time in years Nenna allowed herself to believe it. The elders approached then, their weathered faces solemn, their voices heavy with reverence. Elder Chike, the oldest among them, stepped forward. He leaned on his staff and studied her carefully. "You have done what no hunter, no priest, no wise one before you has ever dared," he said. His voice carried the weight of generations. "You have severed the weaver's thread." Nenna shook her head. "I only held on when there was nothing left to hold but will." Elder Cheeky smiled faintly, his eyes glimmering with pride. "And that, child, is what breaks curses, not charms, not prayers, but the strength to refuse their design." That night, the village gathered around the great fire. They sat beneath the stars, the air warm with the scent of burning wood and roasted yam. And for the first time, the tale of the weaver was not told as a warning, but as a victory. The drums beat slowly, like a steady heartbeat. The griots spoke with voices that carried across the wind, telling the story of the woman who walked into the cursed forest and returned with her child, and how, with nothing but courage and a mother's love, she cut the threads of fate itself. Children sat wide-eyed, clutching their mother's arms. Men and women leaned closer to the fire, drinking in every word. And Nenna, she simply sat in silence, a daisy asleep in her lap, her small hand wrapped tightly around her mother's fingers. The shadows no longer lingered in her mind. Okoro's face returned to her memory, not hollow and cursed, but smiling, free, as he faded into the light. Though grief still ached in her heart, it no longer chained her. Elder Chike rose once more and spoke to the crowd. "Remember this well. Darkness does not vanish because we wish it to. It vanishes when we stand against it and dare to strike where no one else will." The crowd murmured in agreement, their fear replaced with something else: resolve. From that night onward, the forest was no longer forbidden. No curse whispered in the leaves, no shadows stirred in the dark. Hunters returned with game, children played near its edges, and the air that once carried dread now felt alive with the songs of birds and the rustle of wind through clean, untangled branches. But the story of the weaver remained. They carved it into the great stones at the heart of the village. They sang it in the market and taught it in the moonlit gatherings, so no child would forget the price of courage or the power of defiance. And though Nenna never sought glory, she became more than just a mother who had saved her child. She became a living reminder that even the darkest curse could be broken, not by magic, but by a heart that refused to surrender. One quiet evening, long after the drums had stilled and the fires had burned low, Nenna stood at the edge of the forest. The moonlight kissed the treetops, and for the first time she did not see shadows watching her. She whispered into the wind, her voice soft but steady. "Okoro, I kept my promise. A daisy is safe and you are free." The breeze stirred, gentle and warm, as if carrying her words to wherever he had gone. And then she turned back toward the village, her daughter's laughter ringing in the distance, carrying with it the sound of hope reborn. The weaver's loom was broken. The curse was ended. But the tale of Nenna, the woman who cut fate itself, had only just begun.